araw po sa inyong lahat. Inihahandog ng Manila Studies Program ng Kolehiyo ng 𝗍𝐴𝐺𝐸, Universidad ng Pilipinas, Manila, ang MNL, mga natatanging lektura. Samahan niyo kami ngayong araw para sa isa na namang makabuluhang panonood sa serye ng mga lektura na handog ng MSP patungkol sa mga distrito ng Maynila. Ang Manila Studies Program o MSP ay isang regional studies center na nakabase sa Kolehiyo ng 𝗍𝐴𝐺𝐸 sa Universidad ng Pilipinas, Manila. Ang MSP ay itinatag upang magtaguyod ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik tungkol sa iba't ibang aspeto ng Maynila at kinabibilangang rehiyon nito. Ang mga pananaliksik ay naglalayong makatulong sa pag-alam ng kasaysayan, kultura at pagkakakilanlan, pag-unawa sa kasalukuyang kalagayan at paghihiraya sa Maynila at rehiyon nito. Nilalayo ng MSP na makapag-ambag sa pagbubuo ng mga patakaran at programa na makakatulong sa higit pang ikauunlad ng Maynila at Kalakhang Maynila bilang isang premier urban center ng bansa. Sa unang bahagi ng ikalawang episode ng MNL, mga natatanging lektura na may focus sa mga distrito ng Maynila, sasamahan tayo ni Binibining Mary Joseph Tinito at ni Ginoong Anthony Sarmiento sa kanilang pagsusuri ukol sa mayaman na kasaysayan, anyo at pagbabago ng isa sa mga tanyag na istruktura sa Quiapo, Maynila, ang Ocampo Pagoda Mansion. Si Mary Joseph Tinito ay ang tagapangulo ng Kagawaran ng Kasaysayan sa University of the Asia and Pacific. Nagtapos siya ng kanyang MA sa Humanidades mula rin sa University of Asia and the Pacific at kasalukuyang tinatapos ang kanyang PhD sa kasaysayan mula sa Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman. Ang kanyang disertasyon ay tungkol sa mga Marian devotion sa Luzon noong ika-17 at ika-18 siglo. Siya ay kasalukuyang board member ng Philippine Studies Association Incorporated. Si Anthony D. Sarmiento naman ay isang rehistrado at lisensyadong arkitekto, environmental planner at master plumber. Siya ay isang opisyal ng United Architects of the Philippines at miyembro ng Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners. Meron din siyang international na associate membership sa American Institute of Architects. Siya ay kasalukuyang punong arkitekto ng 𝗍𝐸𝐿 Architects, isang kumpanyang nagbibigay ng konsultasyon sa arkitektura at parametric design. Siya rin ay isang guro ng National University College of Architecture at sa Mapua University School of Architecture, Industrial Design, and the Built Environment. Handog nila ang kanilang presentasyon na pinamagatang The Ocampo Pagoda Mansion in Quiapo, Manila, a historical, morphological, and spatial analysis. Ang abstract ng kanilang akda ay ang sumusunod. This paper examines one of the few surviving pre-war Japanese-inspired structures in Manila, the 𝗂𝐴𝐺 Ocampo Pagoda Mansion in Quiapo. In this paper, the researchers will be presenting their findings on the history of the 𝗂𝐴𝐺 Ocampo Pagoda Mansion and the morphological and spatial analysis of the present structure. The historical discussion of the mansion will focus first on the life story of Jose Mariano Ocampo and the construction of the Pagoda Mansion. The second focus of the historical analysis will be pre-war Quiapo, Manila, highlighting the community of Japanese builders and carpenters in that era. While the morphological and spatial analysis will explore the unique amalgamated style of the pagoda that indicates a European sense in the use of the interior space, a Japanese version of the prevailing Art Deco style of the 1930s, and Filipino motifs mixed in with the traditional Japanese pagoda ornamentations. Part of this project is a study on the relational embeddedness of the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion in connection with the other significant cultural heritage properties in the area of Quiapo, particularly those that were built either in the late 19th century or early 20th century. Muli, para sa kanilang presentasyon na pinamagatang The Ocampo Pagoda Mansion in Quiapo, Manila, a historical, morphological, and spatial analysis. Tunghayan natin ang presentasyong hatid ni Binibining Mary Joseph Tinito at ni Ginoong Anthony Sarmiento.
Good day. First of all, before we go to our presentation, we would like to thank Manila Studies Program of the College of Arts and Sciences of the University of the Philippines, Manila, for giving us this opportunity to share our study. This study examines the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion, one of the few surviving examples of pre-war Japanese-inspired architecture in Manila. In studying the architectural evolution of the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion in Quiapo, Manila, the researchers seek to understand the motivations, methodologies, and techniques behind its construction and its changing function over the years. Utilizing the framework of relational embeddedness, the paper delves into the historical significance and spatial influence of the 𝗠𝗏𝐺𝐵 Pagoda Mansion to its district, which is Quiapo. Also, this study explores the dynamics of pre-war Quiapo district along with its Japanese community. The presentation will focus on the following sections of the paper. The pre-war Quiapo, also dubbed as the Golden 30s, focusing on the district of Quiapo before the war, emphasizing the Japanese community during that era, and then Jose Mariano Ocampo and the Pagoda Mansion. And then for the architectural part, the relational embeddedness analysis and the morphological and spatial analysis of the structure. In this study, the methodologies are from the fields of history and architecture. Employing the methods of local history research, the authors used oral history and archival sources. We have interviewed the surviving heir of Jose Ocampo, the builder and owner of the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion. We also interviewed the managers of the dormitory, which is how the Pagoda Mansion is currently used. Archival sources like old photographs were found online under the John Tewell collection, and others were in the Ortigas Library Archive. The data collated from the interviews and archival sources and fieldwork were then visualized into a cultural map of the district of Quiapo. For the architectural analysis, the study looked at the relational embeddedness of the Pagoda Ocampo Mansion to its surrounding district and the spatial and morphological analysis of the structure. So, Quiapo in the 30s. According to Ramona Abundo, the granddaughter of the builder and owner of the Ocampo Mansion, Quiapo was a gentle neighborhood. It was a prosperous district. And as you can read from the quote there, Quiapo by then was a prosperous district with residential houses coexisting with schools, commercial establishments, factories, offices, public market shops, movie houses, and hotels and restaurants, with the Japanese restaurants, the ones being the best in the city. The district was described to have beautiful streets running in all directions. But the street passing through its center is spacious and is lined on both sides with magnificent buildings of cut stone and mortar up to the stone bridge that leads to the San Sebastian. In terms of culture, Quiapo was a center of news publishing during the early 20th century. Several schools and colleges established in 1900s to 1930s were also located in Quiapo. For example, we have San Beda College, established in 1901, Centro Escolar de Señoritas in 1904, the Jose Rizal College in 1919, the Far Eastern University in 1933, and of course, in 1908, the University of the Philippines College of Fine Arts. Part of our documentation project is to map out the vicinity of the pagoda as one of our outputs is this cultural map, which identifies the significant cultural heritage properties in the area. Many of the structures were built in the late 19th century and early 20th century. The Ocampo Pagoda Mansion lies in the approximate center of this cultural district, as seen in this map generated by the researchers for this project, which establishes the significance of the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion in its environs. In this map, you can see that the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion lies at the crossing of these two prominent religious nodes. First, the Quiapo Church, also known as the Minor Basilica of the Black Nazarene, and second, the Minor Basilica of San Sebastian. This triangular alignment greatly influences the architectural design merits of the building. For instance, on one of the veranda or balcony of the Pagoda Mansion, there is a prominent view of the two churches, which really was the intention of the owner, Jose Ocampo, who was a devout Catholic. Like any 𝗍𝗴𝗍𝗶, according to his granddaughter, he had a deep devotion to the Black Nazarene. As mentioned in the introduction, we're focusing on the Japanese community within Quiapo during pre-war time. Quiapo is one of the few districts in Manila that had its own association for their Japanese residents. There are many types of associations and organizations established by the pre-war Japanese communities in the Philippines, most of which for economic purposes or based on specific professions. There were, however, a few that were more place-based and were catered to support and provide mutual aid to the Japanese residents of a particular district. In 1929, the Quiapo District Association was established as a proof of a relatively large population of Japanese residents in the district of Quiapo at that time. According to the research of Pio Andrade in his work Quiapo in the History of the Nation, because of the large Japanese community in Quiapo, it was regarded as an espionage center for Japan in the 1930s. In this study, we're focusing on the Japanese carpenters and building contractors in the early 20th century in the community of Quiapo. By the early 20th century, the carpenters were one of the biggest groups among the Japanese community in Manila, along with the fishermen and refreshment parlor owners. In 1914, the Nihonjin Shokokai, Japanese Commerce and Carpentry Association, was established. This association was the initiative of Japanese master carpenters based in Manila, and within 4 years, its membership grew to 950 members. Later on, in 1931, the Manila Japanese Ship Carpenters Association was also established. By 1936, Quiapo had the second biggest number of representatives in the association. The number of the representatives was determined by the number of recorded Japanese communities residing in the area. Based on the 1939 Commonwealth Encyclopedia Directory of the Philippines, 13 out of the 42 building contractor and carpentry businesses by the Japanese were located in Quiapo, while the rest can be found in the neighboring arrabales or towns of Quiapo. In this table, we have identified these businesses that were specifically located in Quiapo during the time when the pagoda mansion of Jose Ocampo was being built. Now, focusing on Jose Ocampo and the pagoda mansion. The Ocampo Pagoda Mansion was built and designed by Jose Mariano Ocampo, a lawyer and a realtor who owned a 1-hectare estate on both sides of the Estero de Quiapo. He was known as ardent admirer of Japanese culture and even became fluent in Japanese. His granddaughter, Ramona Abundo, remembers being told that he grew up exposed to Japanese culture and language because opposite their house was the Japanese consulate. According to his granddaughter, Jose Mariano Ocampo was born around 1896 and lived in a bahay na bato along Calle Mendoza in Quiapo. In his maternal line, his own grandfather, Crisanto de los Reyes, was a known patriot and was actually implicated in the 1872 arrest and execution of the Gomburza. He was even sent to the Marianas because of his supposed association and support to the movement. The daughter of Crisanto de los Reyes, Scholastica de los Reyes, married the pharmacist Mariano Ocampo of the Botica de Quiapo. Mariano and Scholastica, as parents, were said to be eccentric, and their only child, Jose Mariano Ocampo, grew up likewise as an eccentric and a loner. Jose Mariano Ocampo became a lawyer and a realtor. He eventually married Luisa Mueller Ocampo, whose father was an American of Jewish descent. Together, they had 7 children, one of whom died early. When Jose Mariano Ocampo received his inheritance from his father, he poured all of it into the construction of his pagoda mansion in Quiapo. It was perceived as a frivolous project, and he was laughed at by the local community. Regardless of that, he remained steadfast in his project and vision. The construction began between 1935 and 1936 and was finished in 1941. It was led by both Filipino engineers and Japanese workers and overseers. He commissioned engineers Máximo Paterno and Dr. Jose Cortez. It was built using high-grade reinforced concrete. The pagoda was used as his office, while his actual house was in the adjacent property. Jose Ocampo was interested in Eastern cosmology, though he was a devout Catholic. This interest is evident in the artwork, especially the sculptures found in the garden of the pagoda mansion. The different sculptures reflect both the secular and religious concerns of Jose Ocampo. But what's notable are the artists he employed during wartime Manila. Notable artists of that period were hired by Jose Mariano Ocampo to complete the different artworks within the pagoda, especially in the gardens. The sculptures in the garden were supposedly done by Graciano Nepomuceno and Anastasio Caido, while the paintings inside the pagoda were supposedly executed by some of the best-known Filipino and insular painters at that time, like Rafael Enriquez Jr., Pablo Amorsolo, Roman Faustino, Vicente Serna, Fernando Pereira, and Crispin Lopez. During wartime Manila, the structure had a very interesting history as well. They would host events and were friendly with the Japanese. The facility for language and his earlier affiliations with them raised the status of the pagoda mansion during the Japanese occupation in Manila. In spite of this friendly relation, the family maintains that Jose Mariano Ocampo remained loyal to his countrymen and to his co-Quiapenses. During the air raids towards the end of the war, the pagoda mansion proved to be a durable shelter for the community. His descendant, Ramona Abundo, would narrate that neighbors would flock to the pagoda mansion and hide there during the air raids. With that, I will stop. I will turn over the floor now to Architect Sarmiento to continue the discussion.
Okay. In this part of the paper, the historical data collated from the various primary and secondary sources will be analyzed using the framework of relational embeddedness to understand the significance of the structure by highlighting the levels of relationship and interaction of individuals, communities, and organizations with the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion. This diagram on how to approach relational embeddedness from the study of 𝗪𝗛 et al. Will be used as a framework to correlate the relationships within and around the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion. With a few changes from the original framework, the researchers will look into the interactions of individuals and organizations to the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion. The first stage of this study is to extract relevance and significance through interviews with stakeholders like the building manager and the current owners of the said structure. Complementing the interviews with historical data, the researchers also hope to highlight the value of the building in relation to the rest of its immediate community and even its relation to a larger network of individuals or communities. Analyzing the personal relations, the current owner of the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion, Mrs. Rona Abundo, the granddaughter of Jose Mariano Ocampo. In her interview with her, she narrated fond memories of visiting her grandfather in the Pagoda Mansion and playing in the big garden fronting the Pagoda Mansion. She also remembers how her mother and her sister were the only ones among the 7 children of Ocampo who were supportive in keeping the Pagoda Mansion as a legacy of their fathers. Mrs. Rona Abundo also mentioned in the interview that she distinctly remembers seeing her grandfather destroy the mini pagoda in the garden of the mansion. This shows a personal relational embeddedness of Mrs. Abundo to the mansion. Now we'll try to analyze dyadic interactions of relational embeddedness. Next. So the environs of the Ocampo Pagoda mansion is surrounded by a community of settlements. Evidence has shown that there are varied interactions among the neighborhood and the Ocampo Pagoda mansion. For instance, is the connection of the building to the rear estero, which is the main thoroughfare of transport and delivery of Quiapo. The front yard also hosts important events and gatherings of the family, and because of its prominence, it also opens its doors to the immediate community. Observers and passers-by often describe it to be an eccentric house, suggesting that it is really prominent and noticeable. Next. The building orientation also was consciously designed to have a clear view of the Quiapo Church and the San Sebastian Basilica, suggesting the religious nature of its design and planning decisions. The tiered balconies are oriented towards the street to observe the procession of the Black Nazarene, a unique design judgment. This highly suggests that it has dyadic interactions of embeddedness. Lastly, extracting dyadic social capital of embeddedness. The presence of Japanese business and builders in the area during the time that the Ocampo Pagoda mansion was built implies that there is a knowledge and technology transfer of Japanese design and building techniques to the locals. It was evident in the themes and construction techniques comparable to Japanese temples and pagodas. Next. Well, here we will try to analyze the spatial and morphological analysis of the structure. As there were no surviving records or any architectural plans, so we reconstructed the drawings from actual measurements and from existing photographs. The researchers also did the as-built drawings to show the comparisons of the previous and present form and use of the building. The image were specifically drawn for this study. Next. So sorry, can you go back? All right. The drawings shown here are the elevation or the facade view of the old structure versus what we can see on the present day. The morphology of the structure shows a highly ornate facade with the most obvious influence of Japanese architecture, showcasing pagoda-like aesthetics. The building height is approximately 15 meters from the base to the end of the spire. It is a three-tiered structure superimposed with each other with a fortification bastion-like tower. The structure was built using reinforced concrete. The old front elevation shows a much loftier tower, which was a later addition to the original structure. The 1991 earthquake led to the collapse of this addition, apparently because the tower was not made monolithic to the original structure. Next. The right and the left side elevation shows a round circular door emulating a round shoji door. This is of a traditional Japanese house. Still, in this view, the imposing tiered kawara surface roofing is prominent. Next. The roof was heavily decorated with mythical creatures, similar to a traditional Japanese and Chinese Buddhist pagoda. But what is interesting is the mix of symbolisms used in the roof and parts of the pediment. And as we dig deeper, most of them unexpectedly are not Japanese. Next. To cite an example, the edge of the ridge was decorated with a rooster instead of the traditional dragon and fish of the traditional pagoda or of the naga of the Southeast Asian pagodas. These are examples of Jose Mariano Ocampo's efforts in Filipinizing the elements of this pagoda. Next. Another interesting detail is the end cap of the kawara, which the owner-builder Jose Ocampo personalized in his own typeface, which was based on a stylized Art Deco typeface brought about by the influence of the Art Deco style in building prevalent in Quiapo during his time. Also, the picture shows a Daogong superimposed striated system prevalent in wooden Japanese and Chinese temples, only that the building material used was not wood, but reinforced concrete, a celebrated building material of that age. Next. Baluster ends are decorated again with stylized Art Deco in the Japanese motif. Again, an obvious manifestation of the influence of the prevailing style of that era. The main door, crafted in wrought iron, also highlights a stylized Art Deco amalgamated with Japanese motif. Next. The spatial analysis based on the floor plans drawn for this study shows the division of spaces within the pagoda was far from the typical minimal Japanese single-room style. The floor plan is more evidently Filipino as influenced by European concepts and use of space. It is now becoming more evident that although on the surface it is circumscribed with Japanese elements, the space planning of the pagoda are innately Hispano-Filipino. The division of spaces using walls is a Filipino style, as influenced already by Western space planning. It is opposed to the Ken-scaled rooms and tatami rooms of a traditional Japanese dwelling. Next. These drawings show the roof plan and an attic inside the roof, another European concept hidden in the Japanese stylized roofing. The European concept of a house is also evident in the pagoda mansion, as shown in the usage of a front porch. The concept of a front porch, next, a later addition to the Bahay na Bato structures, which is a traditional house of prominent Filipino families during the Spanish colonization. What interests us further is the presence of the balcony as shown in the second image. As mentioned earlier, the pagoda mansion lies in the approximate center of two religious nodes and is also along the route of the procession of the Black Nazarene. The procession can be directly observed from the balcony of the pagoda, as both churches can be seen in the surrounding balcony. The balcony is a prominent feature of the Bahay na Bato, which was a direct influence of the Spanish colonization era. Okay, to conclude, the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion truly stands out as a unique architectural marvel, not only for being a pre-war Japanese structure in the Philippines, but also for the architectural fusion applied to it. While prominently Japanese in appearance, within its intricate details lies an order and chaos synthesis of style, in that it seamlessly integrates elements of Filipino and European spatial, the prevailing Art Deco style of the time, with Chinese and Southeast Asian ornamentation. Beneath its surface lies a rich tapestry of influences. The Ocampo Pagoda Mansion is deeply embedded in the history and community of the district of Quiapo. The presence of Japanese laborers, contractors, and artisans during its construction era facilitated a subtle but significant transfer of design principles and building techniques. The significance it holds to the community as an events place and a refuge building, and the personal experiences of the people who dwell in the mansion creates a vibrant testament of its relational embeddedness. Thus, while the Ocampo Pagoda Mansion may appear primarily as a product of Filipino amalgamation, it also bears testament to the collaborative exchange between Japanese and local artisans, contributing to its unique architectural identity. Okay, thank you.
Maraming salamat po Binibining Nito at Ginoong Sarmiento sa makabuluhang pagtalakay sa paksa ng kasaysayan at kaanyuan ng Ocampo Pagoda Mansion sa Quiapo, Manila. Sa ikalawang bahagi ng ikalawang episode ng MNL, mga natatanging lektura na may focus sa mga distrito ng Maynila, sasamahan tayo ni Ginoong Crisostomo Miguel Ordoño sa isang pagsusuri ukol sa epekto ng arkitektura ng main building ng Universidad ng Santo Tomas noong ikalawang digmaan pandaigdig, mula sa pagiging isang lugar ng pag-aaral hanggang sa pagiging isang lugar ng pagkilala sa kasaysayan. Si Ginoong Crisostomo Miguel Ordoño ay isang arkitekto at profesor na nakabase sa Pilipinas. Nagtapos siya ng kursong arkitektura sa Universidad ng Santo Tomas at nagtapos bilang cum laude. Kasalukuyan siya nag-aaral ng kanyang masterado sa arkitektura sa Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman, na may espesyalisasyon sa kasaysayan, teorya at kritika. Ang kanyang interes sa arkitekturang pamana ay nagsimula noong siya ay nasa kolehiyo pa lamang, sa pamamagitan ng kanyang thesis na pinamagatang Fides Filipinas, the Roman Catholic Cultural Heritage Complex of the Philippines. Matapos niya makamit ang bachelor ng agham sa arkitektura noong 2017, nagtrabaho siya sa 𝐷𝐠𝐿𝐻𝐼 Architects kung saan siya ay nagkaroon ng karanasan sa larangan ng liturgical architecture. Nakuha niya naman ang kanyang lisensya sa arkitektura noong 2020. Bukod sa kanyang karanasan sa arkitektura, aktibo rin siya sa pagguhit ng mga pook pamana ng Maynila sa pamamagitan ng Urban Sketchers Manila, kung saan siya ay naging miyembro magmula 2022. Noong 2024, sumali siya sa Heritage Conservation Society at kinalaunan naging miyembro ng Renacimiento Manila. Sa kasalukuyan, siya ay nagtuturo bilang part-time faculty member sa De La Salle College of St. Benilde. Handog niya ang kanyang presentasyon na pinamagatang The Cross Remembers, a case study on the dissonant heritage of the Santo Tomas internment camp. Ang abstract ng kanyang akda ay ang sumusunod. Architectural heritage serves as a mnemonic device in commemorating the past and recounting the stories and experiences of people throughout history. This research aims to determine the impact of the University of Santo Tomas main building's architecture during World War II as it transitioned from a place of learning to a site of incarceration and trauma. The evolution of these spaces was studied to understand how they influenced the way internees survived and how the community later commemorated these atrocious events. Having a deeper understanding of how the built environment involved in such historical events justifies the need for the UST main building to be duly protected, properly preserved, and thus shapes the collective memory of the Sampaloc district during the war. This paper is conducted through historical research, which includes analysis of archival materials such as architectural drawings, photographs, and video interviews. The findings contribute to ongoing discussions in heritage conservation and historical studies by highlighting the role of architectural heritage in commemorating significant events, such as those of the Santo Tomas internment camp. Muli, para sa kanyang presentasyon na pinamagatang The Cross Remembers, a case study on the dissonant heritage of the Santo Tomas internment camp, tunghayan natin ang presentasyong hatid ni Ginoong Crisostomo Miguel Ordonio III.
Sampaloc District, Manila's academe haven with rows of colleges and universities, is known for its vibrant life and intellectual pursuits. But what if these spaces of learning turned into spaces of incarceration and trauma? These spaces are a witness of history and is shaped by people's beliefs, communal practices, and cultural values. In the end, these collective memories is preserved through these structures. The French historian Pierre Nora refers these as sites of memory, and it is through preserving and interpreting these sites where societies can foster for a greater understanding of their past and identity. It is through these visual cues and tangible remnants where places of memory may evoke, say, nostalgia. Now, the concept of dissonant heritage explores spaces where conflicting interpretations of history or traumatic events occur. Just like, say, the prison camps of Auschwitz, where the place is associated with the horrors of war. The dissonant heritage is often associated with distortion of content, or, say, the way information about a place is cherry-picked. You also have commodification, and lastly, atrocity. Now for this lecture, I'd like to focus more on atrocity, as we will be dealing with the victims of war. In the case of Santo Tomas internment camp, there's no violent killings involved, as these people are civilians and not really POW since they are not really military personnel. But they were incarcerated and still subject under the rule of the Japanese. Now these psychological and emotional scars were borne by the survivors embodies this dissonance of atrocity. And this is where our story begins, the dissonant heritage of the Santo Tomas internment camp. With the need for more priests, the institution was founded in 1611 and was originally named the Colegio de Nuestra Señora del Santísimo Rosario. And in 1627, this guy, Pope Urban, allowed the college to teach other academic degrees. And in 1645, another pope, this guy, Pope Innocent X, elevated the institution as a university. Well, of course, the patron saint is no other than the patron of students, St. Thomas Aquinas, and thus is now named as the University of Santo Tomas. Originally, it is located in the walls of Intramuros, but of course, due to the overwhelming number of enrollees during as the time progresses, it had to expand. Now, the current location of the university is in Sampaloc district and is originally intended to be a subdivision, that particular district. And specifically, this parcel of land was donated to the Dominicans. And although it took some time before the school administration decided the place to be the expansion, since they had other options, so yeah. The main building serves as the focal point of the university and was designed by priest engineer Father Roque Rowanio using reinforced concrete, which was kind of a new material back then. Now, it is common knowledge that this is an earthquake-proof building, but how? As it is divided into 40 individual smaller structures with a minute gap in between, allowing flexible seismic movement, while still looking as a one whole structure. And going beyond its engineering feats, let's talk about some notable architectural features. The facade here is adorned with a Renaissance Revival style, although some heritage experts claim it's Art Deco based on the CMP by architects Solomon and Avendaño. And before, there was no 𝘖𝗏 yet, the three statues you can see on this slide. And before, there was only the clock. We'll get back to there later. It features also inside double courtyards, and this allowed more ventilation inside the building, as well as the main structure has only 3 floors, but the tower extends further to 9 floors. Now, the university, being a herald of the Catholic faith, features a cross atop, which towers over the whole campus. By December 8, 1942, the Americans were shocked after a surprise bombing by the Japanese was done in Pearl Harbor. Their plan to overtake East Asia finally commenced, as 10 hours later, they attacked the Philippines. And on December 26, 1942, only 19 days after the Pearl Harbor, MacArthur declared Manila as an open city to spare the country's capital from Japanese attacks. Well, the Americans knew they were going to be interned. In fact, they were given a choice. Well, the choices were UST, Ateneo, which during that time was in Intramuros, Holy Ghost College, and UP Manila. Well, of course, they had to choose what would give them the least comfort, and in that case, UST was chosen because of the size of the campus. Well, given that the university is being run by Spanish priests, and Spain during the World War II is neutral, so some of the premises of the university were off limits to the internees, which later on we'll discuss about this. Now, after some negotiations with the Dominicans, they finally allowed the university to become an internment camp. Here you can see some more comprehensive map of the UST campus. Let's try to identify first here the existing buildings. The main building served as the sleeping quarters for men, women, and children, and classrooms and other academic spaces were turned into sleeping quarters. This is where the main kitchen is also located. And back then, the museum and library were also located the UST main building rather, since these collections of the university are owned by Spanish priests, hence they were off limits. Next is the central seminaries where the Dominican priests resided, and despite the university being an internment camp, classes still were held inside the seminary, and only for a short period of time, Catholic internees used to hold masses here, but later on was closed off with barbed wires and became off limits to internees. Another prominent structure of the story of the STIC is the education building, and this is one of the newest buildings to be built before it became an internment camp. It used to house additional sleeping quarters, and on the 3rd floor is where the Japanese had their offices. Next, the annex building at the back is also known as the Domestic Science Building, and this is where the women and children stayed. Whereas for the single men on the gymnasium, one thing about the placement, if you look at it, it's very close to the perimeter, hence it's very susceptible for people to escape. And speaking of escaping and security, let's move next. The main gate of the campus is located along España, and this is the only accessible gate for everyone, as incoming goods and donations undergo strict inspection, after which they are placed on the open field for pickup. Now, the fence here originally used to have iron grills, and this opted for Filipino friends of the internees to interact from the outside. But later on, due to the overcrowding of people and the Japanese imposing strict measures to the internees, they had to close it off with the sawali. One of the potential big threats of the camp was a small epidemic. Thus, they had to set up an isolation hospital at the back for those with serious diseases. Since USC is a big campus, there are lots of large open spaces, as well as the lack of food provided. The internees had to find a way to obtain food, and it is through farming. The farm grounds is located at the current USD football field, or the grandstand as we know today. And a camp garden was also established at the rear part of the site, like this one. Now, with the growing number of internees that needed medical attention, the camp had to extend to a nearby hospital in Santa Catalina Hospital, which is now the Dominican School. Now, you have to know that this is the only facility in the campus which was extended beyond its borders. Now, with the increasing number of internees that was brought from various parts of the country, people had to make the most of what they have, particularly more shelters. The shanties are makeshift structures made out of light materials. And according to the diaries that I've read, it is said that these living in shanties feels a lot better than being crammed inside the buildings because you have your own space there. Now, these shanties are scattered all over the campus, and in total we have 5 areas. Starting off with Shanty A, it is located at the corner of España and Forbes, like this, and Shanty B, near the Pitan Street and the Isolation Hospital, like this one. Next is Shanty C, which is the opposite and corner of Noval and Dapitan, like this one. And next we have Shanty D, which is near the camp garden, showing this one. Lastly, there are also shanties located inside the building courtyard, main building courtyard rather, like this one. Now, as part of limiting the movement of the internees, the seminary grounds were enclosed with barbed wires and became off limits to people. And to avoid people from escaping, especially those from the shanties, a 20-meter no-build zone was imposed along the perimeter of the campus. And throughout the years, the Japs ordered shanties which are too close to the perimeter to be dismantled. Now let's focus at the rear part of the main building. And this is where the dining areas are placed. And due to sanitary reasons, eating was not allowed inside the buildings, as well as to avoid other pests. Although later on, the Japs ordered these to be removed and internees had to eat elsewhere, and that includes even during the harsh rain conditions. Beside the dining area, an outdoor kitchen is also placed, which is also an extension of that main kitchen from the main building. Next, when I was researching on this, I can't really pinpoint exactly where the toilet and bath facilities were, but just to give you an idea, everything was communal. And taking a bath and other things, there was no privacy at all. As one of the diaries would say, if you want privacy, you have to close your eyes. And showing here is a photo of a bathtub with a hose, and water system was kind of limited, so people had to line up before doing their thing. Well, despite the incarceration they are experiencing, the internees valued educational development for the younger members. And originally, the internment committee requested to have the 3rd floor of the main building occupied. But unfortunately, this was not granted, so instead they had to set up the classrooms outdoors. Besides the value of educational development, they also valued entertainment. And the outdoor theater and other shows were held at the plaza. And there are thousands of internees. So with that population, they were able to gather talented people from them, for them to have a good time. And we can see in these ways the internment camp committee did in order to escape a bit from the horrors of the camp. But finally, those horrors are coming to an end. In the evening of February 3, 1945, when the university grounds were stormed by the 1st Cavalry Division, aided by the 8th Regiment and the 44th Tank Battalion. And the Japanese had to fortify themselves in the education building, holding the internees hostage. Thus, negotiations between the Japanese commandant, Lieutenant Colonel Hayashi, and American executive officer, Lieutenant Colonel Brady. The American forces led to an agreement for the Japanese to surrender their weapons and be safely escorted away and unharmed. And after 3 to 4 days, the campus was finally free of Japanese occupation. But the conflict is not entirely over, as remaining Japanese soldiers in the vicinity pose a continued threat. Some even tried to disguise the Dominican priests as an attempt to still stand their ground. And even though the Japs were gone, the main building still served as a U.S. Army hospital until January 1946. And when classes resumed in the majority of the campus, student population surged from 3,200 to 20,584 within 6 years. And this led to the construction of multiple buildings, such as the St. Martin de Porres building at the left. The upper right is St. Raymond's building, and the lower right is the engineering building, Roque Roano building, all of which are still being used today. Now, the designer's original vision of having statues in the main building was continued and tapped sculptor Francesco Monti to do the job. In the main lobby of the main building, it was enhanced further in 1957 with 4 murals painted by Garcia Llamas. The said murals depict the history of the university and its achievement over the years. And in 2005, the Spring of Peace exhibition was done to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the internment camp, during of which the exhibit showed life-size diorama pieces showing the life of the internees. And in 2011, the NHCP declared some sites of the university as a National Historical Landmark, and likewise, the continued commemoration of the STIC annually, and also it is being recognized by the city of Manila. The story of Santo Tomas internment camp, particularly the built environment, showed how spaces evolved as a means of survival. And these architectural landmarks, monuments, and memorials embody historical narratives, providing reminders and information to the public. Let's go back again to the concept of dissonant heritage. This means to preserve the physical characteristics of structures, such as ornamentation, and aids in communicating memories of past events more effectively. If you can see here at the general plan of the university, the arrangement of the buildings or the general axis remained intact after the war, and it features heritage structures like the seminary, education building, gymnasium, and main building, which is crucial in the camp's layout and designation of spaces. The main building still remains the university's visual centerpiece, and its architectural design with a prominent cross atop symbolizes that continuity of history. And though surrounding the main building, taller structures have been constructed, the cross still remains visible from key points around the campus, and that includes España Boulevard. Now, the main building's facade retains its rustic concrete appearance, preserving its historical character. While internal spaces have evolved, the fundamental room layouts and ceiling heights remain. Next, the gymnasium facade, though now part of the Buenaventura G. Paredes building, still displays its original Art Deco elements at the ground floor, despite a modern addition. Now, this high-rise structure now houses the Alumni Center, a hotel, and even an event space. This one, the Central Seminary, functions the same since its construction, and still preserves its Art Deco ornamentation in the facade. As mentioned a while ago, the education building housed medical facilities during the internment camp. Such function paved the way for the building to be used as a legitimate hospital. The building still maintains its facade with highlighted architectural details because of the paintwork, and with a newer facility that accommodates the modern medical needs. Now, in understanding the built environment of the internment camp, I'd like to point out the concept of genius loci. Originally rooted in ancient Roman beliefs, it now refers to this distinctive ambience of a location and captures the essence. Well, in other words, it means spirit of the place. Repurposing buildings like the main building to sleeping quarters transformed its original function, symbolizing its resilience and survival. Likewise, in the creation of shanties and makeshift spaces on the open fields, solidified that sense of place, showing how the internees were able to adapt and create communal spaces for the sake of normalcy. We also have the architecture of discipline. According to Michel Foucault's theory of disciplinary authority, he emphasizes the role of physical settings in regulating individual bodies and actions. Though some of these examples of control using the built environment includes the 20-meter exclusion zone of shanties from the borders, and also the strict flow of goods from the Esplanade, and also the off-limit zones such as the seminary building and the museum. Next also is the lack of privacy. As I mentioned a while ago, there was little to no privacy for the bathrooms and the toilets. Now, what is all of these trying to tell us? Studying the built environment of the Santo Tomas internment camp gives us a deeper understanding of the architectural heritage of UST that goes beyond an educational institution. And speaking of World War II, STIC was one of the largest internment camps in the Philippines. Internees from various parts of the country were transferred here because of its size, and that adds a deeper layer to the history of Sampaloc district. And likewise, we can see the role of educational institutions during the Second World War. Not only in UST, but there are also other neighboring universities and colleges within Sampaloc and Manila that played a major role during this event. And buildings are there. They are witnesses to events. History becomes heritage when we start appreciating our environment based on such stories. And by listening to the people who have experienced the incarceration inside Santo Tomas, we can ensure that we are not only preserving buildings, but preserving stories for future generations. And that's all. And thank you for listening to my lecture.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Ordonio, sa makabuluhang pagtalakay sa papel ng arkitekturang pamana bilang isang paraan sa pag-alala sa nakaraan at pagsasalaysay ng mga karanasan ng mga tao sa kasaysayan. Sa huling bahagi ng ikalawang episode ng MNL, mga natatanging lektura na may focus sa mga distrito ng Maynila, sasamahan tayo ni Binibining Joy Kisha B. Osinar at ni Ginoong Lester Anthony G. Calungsod sa kanilang pagsusuri ukol sa pagpapaunlad ng distrito ng Ermita sa pamamagitan ng pagsasama ng kasaysayan, kasalukuyan at kinabukasan nito sa pamamagitan ng disenyo at arkitektura. Si Binibining Joy Kisha B. Osinar ay isang ika-4 na taong estudyante mula sa College of Architecture and Sustainable Built Environments ng pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila. Siya ang kasalukuyang vice-presidente ng PLM-CASBE Student Council at naglilingkod sa mga estudyante habang nag-aaral. Siya ay masigasig sa pag-aaral ng arkitektura at pinapalawak niya ang kanyang pagkamalikhain sa pamamagitan ng pagsali sa iba't ibang paligsahan sa arkitektura. Siya ay naging bahagi ng koponang gumawa ng dokumentaryong pelikula mula sa PLM na nagwagi ng sunod-sunod sa mga kompetisyon ng A+D Architectural Documentary Film Fest at A+D 2.0 Architectural Documentary Film Fest. Nanalo ang kanilang grupo ng 3 pwesto sa kanilang lahok na Himlayan, Hingahan at 2nd pwesto sa kanilang lahok na Ang Kape mula sa Aljibe. Ang kanyang mga karanasan ay nag-uudyok sa kanya na tuklasin ang mas marami pang posibilidad ng pag-unlad at kamalayan sa larangan ng arkitektura. Si Ginoong Lester Anthony G. Calungsod naman ay isang arkitekto na may higit pa sa 13 taon na karanasan sa iba't ibang aspeto ng arkitektura at interior design, pamamahala ng proyekto, monitoring at pananaliksik. Siya ay mahusay sa paghawak ng maraming proyekto at handang makipagdiskurso patungkol sa arkitekturang pamana ng Pilipinas. Siya ay isang part-time na lecturer sa College of Architecture and Sustainable Built Environments ng pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila at College of Architecture ng National University, Manila. Kasalukuyan rin siya nag-aaral para sa kanyang master's degree sa Universidad ng Pilipinas na may espesyalisasyon sa Architectural Heritage Conservation. Handog nila ang kanilang presentasyon na pinamagatang Understanding Fusion of Heritage and Modernization, Innovative Heritage Network Plan for Ermita's District Sustainable Built Environments. Ang abstract ng kanilang akda ay ang sumusunod. Ermita District is considered as one of the protected urban heritage recognized by the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Historical structures built in the district were registered under the Philippine Registry of Cultural Property or PRECUP. These structures were protected under heritage law to preserve its historical value. Ermita became one of the centers of urbanism, which is a challenge and can cause detrimental factors to its urban sustainability. Fusion of the Horizon model encourages to bridge the gap on understanding of the elements of the past, specifically the built heritage, and the present elements, which are the urban design developments. Through the assessment of the current developments in Ermita District, the historic urban landscape approach will be introduced as a guide to pursue more future-proof results. The intricate balance between preserving and conserving authentic heritage of the district while integrating modern design trends will be pursued by an innovative heritage network plan for promoting urban heritage sustainability. The proposed plan includes a shed and an interactive heritage map application which will be installed on survey-based nodes and will later on enhance the quality experience of the users in the built environment and have a future urban-proof heritage. Muli, para sa kanilang presentasyon na pinamagatang, Understanding Fusion of Heritage and Modernization, Innovative Heritage Network Plan for Ermita's District Sustainable Built Environments. Tunghayan natin ang presentasyong hatid ni Binibining Joy 𝗍𝐵 at ni Ginoong Lester Anthony G. Calungsod.
Joy 𝗍𝐵 together with me is architect Lester Anthony Calungsod to discuss our study regarding Ermita District. Our study was entitled Understanding Fusion of Heritage and Modernization, Innovative Heritage Network Plan for Ermita District Sustainable Built Environment.
Ermita has been known to hold several architectural heritage buildings that need protection. Some of these buildings were declared by NCCA as important cultural property as stipulated by Republic Act No. 166, also known as the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009. This act protects and conserves the national cultural heritage, strengthening the NCCA and its affiliated agencies. For a building to be declared an important cultural property, it must be at least 50 years old, a work by a manlilikha ng bayan, a national artist, and/or a national hero, and a marked structure. Aside from the important cultural properties around the district, this aims to look at embracing the grandeur of other heritage buildings, which may be included in the Philippine Registry of Cultural Property, or PRECUP. PRECUP is an inventory of heritage structures, evaluating and documenting their current state and other vital information like their location, ownership, etc. As the Act recommends, this registry must be established and maintained within 3 years of the Act's effectivity by the culture agencies and local government units.
Yes, heritage law has been misunderstood and somehow limits the researchers' and developers' idea of conserving and sustaining. Through the conducted study, we will be able to delve on understanding of the past and the present factors in pursuing a future-proof result in the Heritage District of Ermita. MCLUP 2005 to 2020 provided a map which identifies the different historical landmarks in Manila, including those which were located in Ermita District. Ira and Medina, 1997, presented Ermita District as tourist belt. Even it is common. Ermita, as stated by architect Calungsod, houses heritage which are tangible and intangible. This includes historical structures, which can be considered as tangible structures existing in the district. Metropolitan Theater, National Library, Manila City Hall, Rizal Park. On the other hand, new photos include the Pasig River Esplanade, the current Manila Post Office, Liwasang Bonifacio, Metropolitan Theater, Arroceros Park, Triangle Park, and Luneta Park, and also the Manila City Hall. The current Ermita, as seen on those photos, was really transformed, which was also the result of the existing urban development projects by the government. These photos from our ocular visit and site observation will be significant data for our comparative analysis to understand the fusion of heritage and modernization. Proceeding to our study, we have the following research problems to be answered at the end of the study. Number 1, how does the fusion of heritage and modernization in urban development encourage the preservation of the historical context of Ermita District? Number 2, how can specific strategies be applied to have a heritage network plan considering that conservation of authentic identity and Ermita District? And number 3, how does the pursuant of heritage network plan improve the functionality of Ermita District's built environment?
To answer the research questions, the following objectives were set: to take steps to formulate the best recommendations to understand how the fusion of heritage and modernization can be the catalyst to the conservation of the historic context of Ermita District. 1. To analyze comparatively the heritage and the currently applied design approaches for developments made for Ermita District through a survey of the respondents and urban built assessment done in the ocular visit. Second, to determine the different factors for development by understanding the fusion of the horizons model and applying the historic urban landscape approach in the proposed heritage network plan for the district. Third, to identify the significance of pursuing a heritage network plan for Ermita on its functionality as a heritage-built environment. Afterwards, strategies will be proposed to continue adapting sustainable methods for future research. The heritage conservation of Ermita through the fusion of the horizon of heritage and modernization will help to identify strategies for sustainable urban development on heritage lands. It helps to open the historic urban approach as part of heritage conservation, considering the sustainable development goals. It brings value to the urban subject and will result in a future-proof community. It also opens a wide array of development on heritage lands without destroying its cultural identity. The ideology of fusion of heritage and modernization for sustainable heritage developments brings the true essence and significance of heritage architecture to the stakeholders and other communities.
So let's go now to our theories. So we have two theories to be discussed: the fusion of horizon and the historic urban landscape approach theory. So first, let's go to fusion of horizon. Fusion of horizon is a philosophical idea introduced by Gadamer in the year 1900 to 2002. It was included on his concept of truth and method. Understanding, as he stated, is the result of the continuous fusion of past and present horizons. The relationship of past and present is codependent to each other. Their existence was both beneficial to each other because what is in the present cannot occur without the past, and past cannot be addressed without the present. To understand the relationship between heritage and modernization, the concept of fusion will be used to the gathered data and will be compared to each other. Understanding the fusion of horizons in the conducted study is helpful enough to identify the areas and to improve and maintain to achieve a much future-proof result. So now let's proceed to historic urban landscape approach. As per UNESCO 2011, they believe that historic urban environment is constantly evolving under the influence of dynamic economic, social, and cultural forces. In response to this, they created the historic urban landscape approach. It was introduced to emphasize the interconnection of heritage and new development. UNESCO believes that heritage and the new development can be beneficial to each other. And also, they this approach underscores the importance of the community involvement in recognizing and preserving heritage, and it goes beyond the mere physical preservation of the environment to include its human and intangible aspects. By considering the existing built environment, intangible heritage, cultural diversity, and socioeconomic and environmental factors, this approach provides valuable tools for urban planning and development that align with the values of the local community. UNESCO believes that the community or the locale of the heritage sites um, have a great part on preserving and conserving the heritage elements of the city. So they want to involve the people and the community when it comes to urban planning or social awareness of heritage preservation. So this historic urban landscape approach serves as a valuable tool for heritage sites seeking sustainable development while preserving their heritage. After evaluating heritage and urban modernization of Ermita district, the research will utilize this approach to develop a heritage network plan. There were a lot of studies conducted to prove the effectivity of historic urban landscape. Emphasize that cultural heritage is a sustainable goal for the world, implying that prevention is better than. To prevent a historical city from falling apart, a strategic approach like HUL should be applied. 𝗠𝗴𝗃𝗏 et al. 2023 recognized HUL as one of the supportive solutions that address contemporary challenges in urban governance. And this approach prioritizes the protection and management aspects. Also, Isaratum noon 2020 believes that the implementation of HUL, as seen on his study in Bangkok, encourages the promotion of creative design of spaces, urban fabrics, and public utilities, contemporary conservation. The development of the historic urban landscape approach within the Heritage Network Plan districts heritage identity with the help of modernization by advancing technology and strategic approaches. Like the other studies, we want on our study on Ermita district to have an HUL approach for conserving and promoting the heritage identity of Ermita. So categorizing through HUL. According to UNESCO 2011, urban heritage comprises of three categories, which are monumental heritage of exceptional cultural values, non-exceptional heritage elements but present in a coherent way with the relative abundance, and new urban elements to be considered. For instance, these are the urban built form, the open space, streets, public open spaces, urban infrastructures, material networks, and equipments. Table 4.1 shows the categorized result of ocular visit and site observation of the urban heritage of Ermita district, where it was identified and grouped according to the category stated. So, Category A, the monumental heritage of exceptional cultural value, includes Manila Post Office, Metropolitan Theater, Bonifacio Shrine, National Museum, Rizal Park, Ermita Church, Manila City Hall, and other historical infrastructures recorded by the PCAP. In Category B, which are the non-exceptional heritage elements but present in a coherent way with a relative abundance, includes the following buildings and structures: Liwasang Bonifacio, other institutional buildings like National Library of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital, UP Medical College, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, and the Ocean Park. Now, proceeding to Category C, the new urban elements to be considered. The Category C was subdivided into the urban infrastructures. The urban built form includes the mixed use stop lightings, street lighting, signages, walkways, sheds, parking areas, and sitting areas. The open spaces included were the Pasig River Esplanade, Arroceros Park, Manila Hidden Park, Mehan Garden, Triangle Park, Plaza Salamanca, Quirino Grandstand, and other parks near the area. Under urban infrastructures are the following: Loton Ferry, Loton Underpass, SM Manila, Ayala Bridge, Jones Bridge, Manila Underpass, and Metro Rail Transit or the Central Terminal LRT1. Categorizing this urban heritage will be later on compared to understand the fusion of heritage and modernization and how it becomes significant or important to the user experience of those community or the community of Ermita district. So we will now proceed to the result of the survey of the qualitative cross-sectional study. So, in order to evaluate the urban heritage status of Ermita, Manila, a cross-sectional study was conducted. Survey questionnaires were distributed to park users in Ermita district in May 2024. The participants were chosen using convenience sampling with a total of 143%, representing 10.4% of domestic travelers as reported by the Philippine Statistic Authority. These domestic travelers, or the percentage of these domestic travelers travel in NCR. The survey included a 10-item semi-structured questionnaire available both online and in physical form, covering demographic data as well as the three variables: the knowledge, perception, and user experience, all aimed at assessing the urban heritage of Ermita district. So, before we proceed to our conclusion, I want to share the challenges of fusion of heritage and modernization in Ermita. The results demonstrate the community's perception of the heritage value of the Ermita district and how they agree on preserving it. At the same time, people's experiences with developments provide them with a satisfactory user experience in the places they visited in Ermita. However, their negative perception of developments, as they believe it lessens the heritage identity of the district, contradicts their satisfactions with their experiences of the current developments. Additionally, the percentage of people who recognize Ermita as a heritage district may decrease in the future if people's satisfaction is provided by the developments and the district's heritage is sacrificed. A strategic approach should be implemented to extend and sustain the heritage identity of the districts like Ermita. And we propose that this strategic approach is the historic urban landscape approach. And currently, the revitalization of Filipino identity through urban developments can be observed in the district of Ermita, specifically the Pasig River Esplanade, which falls under the category C, open spaces. However, a specific urban development for heritage preservation should be proposed. Now, we will proceed to DACO Heritage Network Plan through Historic Urban Landscape Approach. The Historic Urban Landscape Approach offers preservation of the quality, the human environment, enhances productive and sustainable use of urban spaces, values the dynamic character of the landscape, and continues to promote social and functional diversity, according to UNESCO 2011. DACO is a proposed heritage network plan designed for Ermita Heritage District. The plan encompasses innovative and interactive heritage network maps, sheds, and markings. This initiative falls under the knowledge and planning tools of the historic urban landscape approach. The project aims to leverage these developments to promote, preserve, and conserve the tangible and intangible heritage of Ermita districts. DACO project comprises of two, the device application and the sheds and markings. So let's proceed to device application. The network plan should be integrated into and accessible through applications and devices such as phones or computers, which most of the Generation Z or the people today has access to. These applications will feature a heritage journey map resembling a mission type app, which will identify the location of the heritage network sheds and markings. The proposed interactive app will display the map of the location and its historical significance, guiding users to the next shed location. Additionally, registered heritage sites and properties within the district will be highlighted. As a mission type app, completing heritage journey missions will earn user points, which can be redeemed for discounts on the purchase of heritage merchandise. So, through innovation, we will encourage the community or the users of Ermita District to participate on preserving and conserving the Ermita District through giving enough knowledge and awareness, and also letting them to participate or including them in planning through this application. Thank you. In conclusion, the NACO Heritage Network Plan is designed to qualify as urban heritage according to UNESCO standards. It will function as part of the Ermita District's urban infrastructure and equipment network. Prioritizing heritage in urban development can help the district preserve its cultural identity while also ensuring its growth and providing a satisfying living built environment. This leads to a sustainable urban heritage development and also utilizing our innovative generation can help to sustain the heritage identity of this vision of heritage urban heritage developments.
Sheds will be strategically located in areas frequented by tourists. To identify these locations and through surveys, heritage node network were established for these sheds and markings. The sheds will be organically designed to blend with their surroundings, highlighting the importance of heritage buildings. Each shed will have seats and bike racks to encourage pedestrians and cyclists to participate and have a comfortable resting place in their Ermita heritage journey. The shed features extendable roofs to provide shelter during light and heavy downpours. Within the shed, interactive boards were put on display providing QR code for the app where they get to read on the mission, vision, and goals of setting an activity related to the heritage journey. The heritage map will also be on display, showing some historic site photographs of Ermita.
Thank you. In conclusion, the NACO Heritage Network Plan is designed to qualify as urban heritage according to UNESCO standards. It will function as part of the Ermita District's urban infrastructure and equipment network. Prioritizing heritage in urban development can help the district preserve its cultural identity while also ensuring its growth and providing a satisfying living built environment. This leads to a sustainable urban heritage development and also utilizing our innovative generation can help to sustain the heritage identity of this vision of heritage urban heritage developments.
The Heritage Network Plan is a way of promoting Ermita cultural heritage through the activities incorporated in the app's QR code. It promotes heritage building through awareness, which is the beginning of any conservation effort. Through awareness, cultural value will be inculcated in the consciousness of the people. When one starts to care, the protection and conservation of these heritage structures will be reaped. The sheds and markings will not only benefit Ermita's heritage, the workforce also benefits from these sheds as they answer their demands for shelter against the intermittent weather conditions. The workforce is one of the most important factors of urban development. Taking advantage of the situation, sustainable development and heritage conservation will coexist.
That would be all. Thank you. God bless.
Maraming salamat po Binibining Osenar at Ginoong Kalungsod sa makabuluhang pagtatalakay sa paksa ng pag-uunlad ng arkitekturang pamana sa distrito ng Ermita. Muli, maraming salamat sa ating mga kasama na nakilahok sa diskusyon ngayong araw. Nawa ay marami tayong natutunan mula sa ating mga tagapagsalita at mangyaring sulubungin natin sila ng isang masigabong palakpakan. At mula sa Universidad ng Pilipinas, Manila, Kolehiyo ng 𝗷𝗫𝗄𝐿 at Manila Studies Program, isang taus-pusong pasasalamat sa lahat ng lumahok sa huling segment ng ikalawang episode ng MNL, Mga Natatanging Lektura, Districts of Manila Heritage Studies Episode. Samahan ninyo kami sa iba pang pagkakataon habang patuloy natin itinataguyod ang mga paksang may kaugnayan sa Manila Studies. At kung nagustuhan ninyo ang panayam, maaari ninyong bisitahin ang aming YouTube channel para sa iba pang makabuluhang paksa. Muli, maraming salamat sa inyong pagtangkilik. Mabuhay tayong lahat!
𝑗𝐸𝐿